What's going on, my fellow degenerates? Passion here once again with another video with some Overwatch 2 gameplay. So today I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the stuff going on in the Overwatch community. Some of it recent, some of it's kind of been going on forever, but all of it kind of just irritates me and drives me up a wall. So first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about balance changes. Now, I made a video way back in the channel's history. I'm talking like 8 years ago, when Genji got this big nerf, right? And a lot of people were complaining about it. And in that video, I kind of stressed that the nerfs were important for heroes that were overpowered, and I kind of gave a lot of my thoughts on why people were looking at the nerf too narrow-mindedly. Well, today I kind of wanted to expand on that original idea. So every time that Blizzard drops a big balance patch, like those that usually come like around mid-season, the community loses its mind, right? Like people think one hero is overpowered, the other one is trash, and that the devs have no idea what they're doing. But here's the thing. Blizzard isn't just tweaking the game based on specifically your ranked games, right? Because they actually have the data from every rank, every region, across every game mode. And that's something that like most people don't even think about. So you can't just sit here and scream, oh, X hero's so OP and Blizzard keeps buffing them into the moon, what are they doing, why are they so stupid? When the data set you're going off of is like specifically about 20 games in specifically Gold 4 on a Tuesday afternoon in North America. Meanwhile, someone who's in Europe, who's currently Diamond 2, playing at 11 a.m. in the morning on a Wednesday, and also has played those same 20 games, might be saying something about the same hero in the same live patch, saying like, man, this hero is absolute trash, I can't do anything with them, they're completely unplayable. Meanwhile, someone in Japan playing that same hero on the same patch, but in a quick play game at like 9 at night on a Friday, may think, wow, this hero feels great to play, I'm having so much fun. Blizzard has all of this data, right? And they need to sort through it all and discover what the actual general consensus is for any given hero across the entire globe. And that may not even align with what your small little gold ranked echo chamber, or maybe even the broader North American echo chamber, might be preaching, right? So that's something you got to take into consideration. And sometimes, yes, they do get it wrong. Like I said in that old video, they don't really know how the community will react to it until the patch goes live. And, I mean, even then, even back in that other video, they had the public test realm. I don't even think they have the public test realm anymore. So there's really no, like, place for them to, like, test these out in a somewhat live setting until the patch goes live. So, yeah, they'll play test it internally at Blizzard, but their sample size is small. They're human, and they can just get stuff wrong sometimes. Like, that's part of being human. And I'm sure that if you were at your job, and if customers or clients called you completely incompetent for every single little mistake you made, especially if that mistake was not avoidable, you get a bit defensive. So that's kind of my point with this, is that, you know, is that people need to realize that it's not just your specific echo chamber, even as broad of an echo chamber as your entire region. It's not just that Blizzard is balancing off of. They're a global company. They have to consider all perspectives of the millions of players that play their game, and have to kind of like go with stuff that may be kind of more middle of the road, and not appease everyone, but kind of try to appease the most amount of people, and that is a very difficult job to do. You have to be like really skilled and proficient in like data analytics and stuff like that to actually like figure out how to tune these heroes effectively. So I think that these armchair like game developers here who try to sit here and tell Blizzard how to balance their game are kind of being idiots. But moving on. This kind of leads me into another point, because I want to now talk a little bit in depth about the recent Sombra rework in Season 13, because there's something that I didn't account for in that original video that I made about Genji's nerfs, and that's how a hero feels to play. So I think back then the Genji nerfs were, I don't even remember what they were, but they were probably minor compared to the massive way Sombra has been reworked here. But let's talk about it. So ever since the season went live, I've been seeing mostly 3 different camps of people talking about this patch. The first camp is the Sombra mains, crying about how bad their hero feels to play now. Then there's the top 500 players, who are basically completely indifferent to the rework, because it's not much different to how they've been playing her all along. And the majority of the middle rank players who don't main Sombra have been kind of celebrating her downfall and like mocking the Sombra mains like they've just won a war. And unfortunately, the last one of those has been the loudest in the community. Now, I think I have a unique outlook on these changes because I've always aspired to be a Sombra main, because I've always loved her design, I love her lore, thought she was a fantastic hero. But in Overwatch 1, I couldn't play her at all. I was horrible at her, which made me feel really bad because I love this hero. I wanted to be good with her, and I just wasn't. However, in Overwatch 2, prior to the Season 13 rework, I did feel like she was much more approachable to play. I got a little bit better at her, and I've also felt like her low damage facilitated a pretty high skill expression, for like a pretty high skill expression ceiling, because you kind of had to be really good to actually like get kills with Sombra, instead of just dealing poke damage, right? So, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm unsympathetic to the other middle ranks. Believe me, I've dealt with plenty of annoying Sombras on the enemy team, so I know what it's like, but they never really made me feel frustrated enough to actually hate the character, especially like knowing how fun that she had become for me to play myself. I enjoyed the stealth aspect of her kit. I thought it was great, and that was kind of brought to the forefront with her first rework in Overwatch 2, and it really made me feel like I embodied what this hero was all about, what she was trying to be with her lore and her kit and everything. So it was great. But then came the Season 13 rework, and as someone who did previously kind of main Sombra a little bit, I can say that the changes they did to her, they are a net buff. They are not a nerf. She shreds through targets now like they're made of paper. Like, me and my friend were in the practice range the other day, kind of mystified at how fast a Sombra could just, like, melt through a Mauga. Like, it was absolutely nuts. However, just because it is a buff, it does not mean that it is good. Because this rework kind of forces you to play her in a playstyle that kind of robs Sombra of her identity, because she no longer feels like a hacker lurking in the shadows, kind of waiting to pop out and surprise you. She just feels like a worse Tracer, essentially. She's kind of more focused on like flanking now, and it just doesn't feel like Sombra. She doesn't live up to her lore or her identity anymore, at least in my opinion. Now, I think there is a middle ground to be found here in restoring that kind of like sneaky hacker fantasy, while also making her not completely annoying or oppressive. I feel like there could be 3 things that you could do to fix Sombra in this aspect. So number 1 would be making stealth a regenerative resource, similar to like Ferris boosters or the healing on Moira's Biotic Grasp. That way it's finite, but it will last a bit longer, and you can be more strategic on how you use it. And number 2 would be to increase the radius of her detection when she's in stealth. Maybe like raise it about like 10%. I would have to like play around in the game like with meter measurements to actually get a more accurate depiction for you. But yeah, I'd say like maybe increase the stealth radius a little bit, so she can be detected a little bit more easily when in stealth. And 3 is make her base movement speed a bit faster. I'd say similar to how she is in stealth, because when she had her stealth passive, and she was like running around in stealth, that felt really cool. Just the animation and her speed made her feel really good. So like maybe make her base movement speed a bit more comparable to like Genji or Tracer, or maybe even slightly a little bit faster. Hell, like I would be fine with her like stealth speed that she has just being her base movement speed. Like that'd be fine. Maybe tweak it down a tiny bit so she's not like as fast. I feel like It might make her a little bit harder to hit like that, but you know, put it somewhere around Genji or Tracer, maybe slightly faster, and she'd be great to play. But moving on from the balancing, let's talk about the shop, because oh boy, people love to bitch about the shop. And with the recent gilded aspects coming to the Mythic store that are essentially the black and gold recolors of the Mythic skins, it's gotten a lot worse. So I won't deny the cost of skins can get kind of nuts sometimes. It wasn't too long ago in Overwatch 1 where $20 might get you like 6 to 14 different skins based on loot box prices. Granted, that is if you didn't already own any of them, because you would get duplicates back then. But you could get like 6 to 14 different skins in a set of 24 loot boxes. That's what $20 would get you back then. And now, that same $20 just gets you a single skin from the shop. However, not only was a lot of the costs in Overwatch 1 kind of subsidized by the fact that people had to actually also buy the game along with buying the loot boxes, but they also didn't have Activision breathing down their necks at that time to kind of make as much money as possible. That didn't really start till 2017 when Armin Zerza was brought on to kind of run the finance department. And by then they were already using the loot box system, and they've actually fought with Zerza through the years of against changing into stuff that's more predatory on the player. Like if you listen to Jason Schreier's book, Play Nice, he talks about how like Zerza wanted to charge for all the maps and all the heroes and basically everything that goes into the game, and the devs were like, no, we're not going to do that. So it could have been a lot worse, and they've been fighting with Zerza for years. Luckily, I think Zerza's gone now, but like the ripple effects that he kind of put into the game are still being felt today as Blizzard is trying to kind of recover and rebuild that culture they had back at the old Blizzard, back before, you know, Activision kind of came in and ruined everything. And because Overwatch 2 is free to play, you got to think about it like this. There's no guarantee that any given player will spend any money on it whatsoever, right? There are players who maybe don't spend a single dime on Overwatch 2. So those people are making it more expensive for the rest of us who do spend money on Overwatch 2, right? So of course the prices are going to be higher in the sequel when you can't rely on the fact that you're going to be making some money from the game on every single player. So that's something I wanted to bring up. And not to mention, I mentioned this recently in my Season 12 retrospective, but skins can take upwards of a year to get into the game. So what happens is the artists that work at Blizzard, they'll draw up these skin concepts, but then they have to go through a really long, lengthy, grueling process where their designs have to receive feedback from the skin surveys, and then corporate decides from those skin surveys if there's enough interest to develop the skins. If there is, then it gets sent to the modelers who have to 3D model it, then it's sent to the coders who have to like code it into the game, and then they play test it to make sure it doesn't break anything else. If the skin comes with any special voice lines, well then they have to get the voice actors back in the booth to record those voice lines. If the skin has particles, they have to be added and also painstakingly optimized to make sure that they can, like all the different systems, including like the Switch and everything, can handle them. Then they have to do even more playtesting, of course, to make sure the skin isn't giving some sort of unfair competitive advantage. And finally, when it's all said and done, corporate then decides when the skins actually drop and what bundles they get placed in, which themselves may be months away from the time that this all gets decided. So these things don't just get done in a couple weeks. Like, these take months, or and like in some cases up to a year to get these skins into the game. And because of that, now you can see why recolors are so prevalent in the game and in the shop. It's because most of those tedious parts of making a skin, like design and play testing and all that, they've already been done. All you have to do is just kind of adjust the colors on any given skin, which more than likely shouldn't break anything, and it can get done much faster. It's still not instantaneous, right? Like, it can still take a couple months for everything to get approved, but they can deploy these recolors much faster, and it makes the season not feel so sparse when they don't have the manpower to make like a ton of unique skins for a season. So could these recolors be not as expensive for people who already own the base skin they're based off of? Absolutely, but I know that they won't, because, again, it's not the artists or the developers or even Aaron Keller making that call. That's the bosses at Activision. That's the suits at the top. They want to make as much money as possible. So of course, like, if they're not gonna put any, like, leave any money on the table for people who already have the base skin. Like, they want that money too. Like, they're not gonna be like, well, you know, we've made enough money off of this. No, they're not gonna do that. And this also goes for why we get so many skins for heroes like Kiriko and Mercy. They sell. You can bitch and complain all you want, but they sell because people want them, and so they buy them. And the way I look at it is this, right? I would rather have a butt ton of Kiri and Mercy skins to appease those fickle suits at Activision who can and will shut this game down if it fails to make as much money as they want it to, than to kind of die on the hill that less popular heroes need to have more skins. And believe me, I'm getting just as sick as everyone that we don't have great skins for like Ramatra or Venture or any of them. But I understand that this game is kind of bound by the chains of big business thanks to Activision's ownership of Blizzard. And often the devs are kind of working in a very limited capacity because of it. And they're not able to do kind of what they really want to do with the game. You know what I mean? So the last thing I want to talk about, finally, is the new game mode, Junkenstein Lab. Which allows customizable abilities, much like the proposed original PvE talent tree system that was scrapped. And something that always comes up with this mode is that even though people are enjoying it, they often give the, well, it should have been in the game at launch argument because of the cues it took from the scrap PvE talent trees. And look, Overwatch 2 was announced 5 years ago in 2019. And they started working on it at least a year before that, if I remember correctly from Jason Schreier's book. So a lot of the people who originally had plans for that PvE content, they don't even work at Blizzard anymore. Like, they were fired or they were laid off, mostly by those same finance people hired by Activision who are trying to cut costs and maximize profits. So the folks that were working on those PvE ideas, they didn't get to see them through like they wanted. And same goes for those people who were in charge of like the story and the cinematics and stuff like that. Same deal. They were most likely fired or laid off. It's why we're not getting the content that we used to get with Overwatch. And that the whole it should have been in the game at launch argument, it's old. It's old now. You gotta accept that the game that we have now is what we have, and you gotta appreciate the updates that come. And to reiterate something that Flat said recently, he said, if things are good, call them good. If things are shit, call them shit. It's that simple. Like, things have changed over the years, right? Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but the game is evolving, and it's better to enjoy what we've got rather than clinging on to this idea of what could have been. And one thing I want to leave you guys on here with this is that people need to realize, and I'll keep reiterating this until people understand, is that the actual developers who work on the game, they love the game. They live and breathe this game. They aren't some vaudeville villains like maniacally twirling their mustaches saying to themselves, how can we make our players hate this game as much as possible? No. They want us all to be happy and enjoy the game with them. Right? They want our feedback to know how we can all make a great game together. That's why every director's take ends with, let's make a great game. As in, let us, the developers and the community, make a great game together that we can all enjoy. Sometimes they make mistakes, sometimes they get it wrong, sometimes they're kind of backed into a corner by corporate and have no choice but to put out like an inferior product. Otherwise they don't get to continue working on this game, but please give the developers some slack. Alright, they're trying their best. They want to have Overwatch 2 be a fantastic game that we all love to play. But that's really all I have for you guys today. Remember, guys, if you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, I'm Passion, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Yeah. Turn me on a puppet on the screen, what you know about it. Get it.